Having spent, I actually lived in Abu Dhabi for a long time as well. So I was the global infrastructure architect for National Bank of Abu Dhabi at that time. It's now First Abu Dhabi Bank.
Which is now FAB, yeah.
So so good to meet you. Hopefully there is something that we can do together. I'm very familiar with the region, and so it is something that I'd be keen to do.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Zain. As I mentioned earlier, also, Chris, just before John can also brief us more about what's required and what's the timelines that you were asking about. The project itself is not about something that we need to be deployed now. It's still, as I told you earlier, we are in the pricing stage now. So this is one thing to take into consideration. It's not about having the resources available at the time being. This is one thing that maybe we missed or there was a confusion regarding this. As a second point, part of the implementation or part of the scope that I shared with you, there is the implementation part and there is the development of certain playbooks, right? And this is something that I will share now with you also more details. John can also brief us more about the project since he's handling the customer directly also.
Yeah, thanks Ziad. So basically, as Ziad rightfully mentioned, guys, we're still at the early stages of pricing the project. From our perspective, our strategy is more aligned toward identifying the appropriate partners that we're going to work with to deliver back the value that we're positioning with our customer. Just to set some expectation, this is one of the largest customers in the Middle East that we're working with. Potentially, we have all the required components glued in there. Most probably, if you're very familiar with Phantom as a solution specifically, it's a very rare. There is very scarce and rare skill set in the market that can really deliver a valuable outcome on that and with a solution, while competition is very clear. The solution is very well positioned with the customer as well, if I may say. So honestly, what Ziad shared with you guys is pretty much the scope that we're looking for, where basically the actual scope spans across 2 years or 3. We split it into 3 phases. If you look at the entire scope, it spans around 53 playbooks. So what we're talking about right here is not a one-off thing. It's more of a strategic alignment with the customer that will span across 3 years. Currently, we're only covering 30% of their scope, and by scope, we mean their security operations. Such massive customers, and I hope we can reach to a situation where we would share this information, but they have multi-operations depending on the department that they're working with, so they're pretty massive. However, I think the solution when it comes to implementation is pretty straightforward. You have the infrastructure, might it be virtual or hardware, you deploy the solution, and then you move into the critical part of the engagement where you need to do workshops to evaluate the use cases / playbooks. You define these use cases / playbooks, and then you start developing them, architecting them, and building them. Part of that, you definitely know there are technology integrations required depending on the workflows of these playbooks. And as well, there are specific, let's say, I think privileges that are required to make sure that these workflows are in line and to avoid any business interruptions. So contextually, we have the entire thing in hand. What we're currently evaluating is the right partner to work with to deliver this work.
Okay.
So we need really good skill set to start with. We need commitment, and we need to be very competitive when it comes to the price. Such customers, they have a very large spanning procurement process, and they look for the best value with the best cost return as well. The entire scope or the entire project across the 3 years will cover around 53 playbooks. Phase 1 talks about 25 playbooks in specific.
Is there a
we can share a sample of
area? Sorry, John. Is there a specific operational area that they're trying to focus on initially? Is it kind of like perimeter security and infrastructure and that sort of things, or is there those initial 25 playbooks?
So looking at the size of the customer, Zain, they have a massive operation. So if I may say, 30% of the security operations means around 25 to 30 people. That includes security analysts and incident responders, as well as admins. And this is only 30 to 40% of their operations, okay? So such customers, they find it pretty difficult to be able to manage and orchestrate incident response in specific and case management when their operation is this wide. What they're looking for is to optimize their operation and their incident response to be able to focus on the most important or critical areas of the business. And then gradually the plan is to make sure that we extend and span the solution across the other areas, the critical areas.
Okay. Just the way you're talking about the client, I have a fair idea who it is. But we in our team actually have, if you know, don't have to say yes or no, but if it is Saudi Aramco, then we've got somebody who's actually worked with them specifically on as the.
It's a CNI, but it's not Saudi Aramco. It is a CNI. It is a critical national infrastructure, yet it's not Saudi Aramco. Okay. So it's not Saudi Aramco. Something similar to it. The only reason we're not disclosing the information, it's not that it's not a barrier relevant to trust. It's more because we have an NDA with the customer, and we're just making sure that we're respecting whatever we have in place.
I said you don't need to say, but just in terms of having dealt with organizations of that nature, and specifically in Saudi Arabia, one of our actually our SOC director in Barcelona. Was the incident manager for Ramco's major security breach a few years back, where essentially they replaced every single desktop in the company. So we've got a fair idea around the incident response and the nature in which they operate on that sort of scale, with good experience in that space. I think that for us, and I'm glad you've kind of said that this is an evolution over time of their services. We as Proficio, we probably have more experience in SOAR than just about anybody, in that we've been actually using SOAR in our own operations for probably a better part of 8-9 years. We've had our own platform and own technology, so all of those integration pieces with other vendors and technologies and we've been building them for a long time. And really understand that sort of thing, and we build our own, preferably, rather than using other APIs or other scripts that have been provided directly. So what we found with, for example, on Phantom, for us to modify the default playbooks that are there and available takes us as much time as if we had to build it from the ground up and handle all of the integrations ourselves. So it's never, Phantom is not as easy. I was one of the early beta testers working with Jeff Williams and the team there. He was the CEO of not CEO. He was the worldwide channel lead for FireEye when he actually initially started this company. So it's the Phantom before it was acquired by Splunk. So I was quite early on in the adoption and looking at it, and provided them with some feedback on how those workflows needed to work. So I'm very familiar with the technology, and we do have some strong development skills. But we do think that, you know, there is a lot more, and I'm glad you said there's a lot of planning and design and understanding workflows before you actually start thinking about the playbooks. And this is really our strength. It's just this entire end-to-end life cycle of a playbook and that workflow.
Yeah, fully aligned, Zain, fully aligned. But and let me put some context around one key point here that would define how we're gonna go to the customer, or whether you would be able to basically strategize with us on this specific submission. The reason we're splitting this into phases definitely is relevant to the budget, and I'm pretty sure, since you have a very good background around Phantom or similar solutions, even 25 playbooks is a bit of a stretch when it comes to such customers, especially that today for them to decide how they're going to basically mature in the future, they need to understand what playbooks they need to start with, what value, and what they're looking to see in the near short term. The reason we're defining 25 playbooks is that we're going to, apologies for the noise in the backend, guys.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So the reason is that we have a list of the full stretched playbook list. We want to do a workshop with the customer where we'd even define which playbooks would be the first 25 that we want to target to show them quick wins. And from there on, we're capping in the scope the technologies to 50 so that we make sure that we can achieve something that's tangible within the first year or the first round of, or the first phase of the project. So there are caps in there, definitely to control the cost, and definitely to make sure that we can achieve something in year one so that the customer is much more in going to the phase 2 and year 2, which potentially we're expecting double of what we're talking right now.
Yeah. So just in the kind of back of a napkin type calculations that I did is that the effort associated with building a playbook, you know, per playbook, and the first say, you know, 5-10 of them, while you figure out your framework and your structure and the workflows, the base workflows, is you're probably looking at about between 40 and 80 hours per playbook, and that's just a realistic, you know, because there's it's a lot more negotiation and figuring out operational workflows than it is actually doing the work, and that's what sucks up all of the time. So once we actually have it locked down and you get through the first 10 or so, it will speed up. But you know, just depending on the operational areas and the divisions and the integrations that you're working on, we tend to like to work towards more using data models than vendor specific, so that we have an operational structure around how it works, and then the integration, the API piece of it, because I need to do these 4 actions, is actually much simpler. But where we almost ignore that, it's not a Palo Alto, it's just a firewall, and then we'll worry about the integrations after the fact and seeing if there's other integrations. So for example, you know, certain things when we're doing on a checkpoint management, as an example, we didn't want to do the integration with the checkpoint itself. We rather used Tufin as an orchestration layer to help with some of the workflows, because they had already done the full API suite integration, and it was easier for us to integrate that. That then, as an example, then gave us the ability to be able to implement exactly the same workflows and playbooks with Palo Alto, Fortinet, Cisco, without actually having to do any more development work, just leveraging what Tufin did through the secure change. So those kind of initiatives are really dealt with upfront, because that it helps you long term, and that's going to be would really be the focus and the core, and when selecting those, you know, so when you're looking at EDR, when you're looking at data enrichment coming from the different technologies, the vulnerability scanning, all that sort of thing like this, that integration workflow and those sort of timeline, those mappings is what's going to suck up a big chunk of the time up front, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, definitely, Zain. And once you see the playbooks list that we're discussing, you will definitely notice that there are lots of overlapping playbooks, if I may say, that won't really need. So most probably the development won't be required across the entire 25 number that we're discussing. There are overlapping playbooks that primarily you're going to see limited development in there. But again, the beauty of this engagement is that we have the flexibility of sitting with the customer after we win the project and advising them where to start, how to start, where are the quick wins, how can we deliver it, what do we need from them, what level of development we're looking for. So these iterations are currently viable and accessible.
Okay.
Right now, they're looking for somebody to put something that's solid on the table and cost effective.
Yeah. So I mean, we've got 2 ways that we typically do this model, because I having dealt with the Middle East quite a lot, there is generally a fairly big scope creep, in particular on the bigger organizations. So we can give an estimate of what we think is going to be the effort associated with this, the timelines and all that sort of thing, and then but then we can do it based on time and materials basis, but with a fixed estimate on a fixed scope, and then manage it properly. Typically, I would add in about 30% for project management and program management, just because it is something that you have to rein in those controls around the operational processes and what the scope is for the specific playbooks. So it
Chris,
is.
if you can let me share the screen, I can show you also the list of playbooks that we are discussing.
Yeah, go ahead. Chris, you want to give him present right?
So yes, exactly. We're gonna share it, Zain, but mostly, I think on the PM part or the
Chris, do we have an MNDA part?
It would be best that we
You're on mute, Chris.
Hello?
Chris, you're on mute.
Just bear with me. Sorry, Zain, I didn't hear what you said.
Do we have an MNDA in place
We
yet?
don't, not at the moment, no.
Okay, so just share with us what you think you can, but we need to get that in place. It's have you got a standard one you send?
So this is just a list of the playbooks, Zain. We're fine.
Yeah,
I
can share
any
it.
sensitive details.
But if you can allow me to share, because I cannot.
Yeah, it's just bear with me. Let's just get this going.
So that's only the playbook names, guys. So we're good. We're good with that.
Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, I just don't want to put you in a position where you're giving us stuff that you can't.
No, as a next stage, if we want to move forward, we will sign an NDA. We have an NDA that we can sign, or if you have any sample that you already use, we can do that.
Mutual NDA that we use, so we can send that over to you.
Hold on.
That would be best, yeah.
Share. Some reason it's not wanting to let me share the screen. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, but what you've got to do is just go to you see the people up at the top right hand corner, and just go and find is it John or Ziad that wants to share?
It's John. Then I need to share it with.
And then just right mouse click on him, and you'll be able to give presenter rights.
Give it to me. Like I will share it from my side.
It's not let me.
Give it to Ziad.
No, it's not letting me do it. What am I missing on it, Zain? I've done this so many times before.
If you go to the top of the screen, where you see the two little people and it's got like 4 over there next to it.
Yep.
It shows the people presented. Just click on that and it'll bring down a list of all of the attendees.
Yep.
Okay, and then go and find Ziad's name and right mouse click on it, and then just say give presenter rights.
There we go. There we go. Apologies for the delay, chaps.
You too used to WebEx there, Chris?
Yeah, with Cisco, definitely.
Okay.
It's far a bit, Ziad. We can't really see the, at least for me, I'm not sure if the guys can. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, it's fine. I've got a big screen in front of me.
So can you start from top, Ziad, to bottom? Just scroll very quickly for Zain and the team to understand what are we talking about. And
so can I just ask to start with the reason for Phantom? Can I assume that they're a Splunk client, or was just Phantom their choice of?
So they have a hybrid model deployment, to be honest, Zain. They're not exclusively on Splunk, and so they're using Splunk for its power in the log collection or investigative layer, the searching power, and then they have on top a different correlation engine that's based on a separate technology. But definitely, they're building up, obviously, with Splunk as one of their strategic vendors. And I think potentially they're considering other solutions, if I may say. We're working tightly with them because they asked us to exclusively engage with Splunk on this phantom opportunity, which obviously makes it their preference, their preferred solution of choice.
All right. Okay. And do you have any indication of log volumes?
Log volumes, you mean on the sim layer?
Across all of the different technology types. I know that you said you're restricting it to about 50 in terms of.
We do. We have the details. Yeah.
Okay. Is that something you can share? Just kind of an indication of size.
For their ingestion layer, I'd rather whenever we have the NDA in place because it's significant. And it might give an indication. So, but yeah, all the information required to make sure that we tighten the scope as much as possible, we have access to it.
Okay, so just from reading this list over here, they are. It seems, just going through this a little bit, that their focus is a little bit more threat focused. It's kind of like MITRE ATT&CK ALIGN sort of stuff.
100%.
And what they're tending to do, what they're looking for is actually it's quite specific to the use cases. Whereas there's going to be, just looking at this, a lot of the responses and the remediation actions associated with these playbooks are going to be fairly similar, if not overlapping. So this, although they're listing 25,
exactly.
It's not
Spot
really.
On, Zane, sorry.
Yeah, so it's not really separate playbooks that they're listing over here, and I think that so there's workflows and there's response capabilities, and then there's so things that we would be wanting to do up front are if they're using like ServiceNow or some of the other ticketing system. Whatever that might be, the integration over there and collection of that, and driving workflows through there. The things like integration with the SIM, both the correlation engine as well as the Splunk environment, because a lot of that is being able to build those searches and being able to extract that specific data for the investigation. And then key technologies like endpoint. There's a lot of FireEye over here, so I'm assuming that there's a significant amount of HX. In there, so if they've got Helix or just the HX interface, those are going to be key early on. It's just looking at the types of things that they've got over here. Those are going to be like the most important ones. And then I don't see any indication of firewall technologies, but whatever that is going to be, that is also going to be an early on one. Things like IDS signature implementations and custom signatures, things like that, as part of the workflow and the playbook are going to be key here.
Exactly, Zane, and this is my point. So when you look at the list of playbooks, you would really see that most of these playbooks do overlap. So it's not really like you're doing like 25 use cases and the outcome would be 25 playbooks. It might be like 3, 5, 4 use cases, and then the outcome would be like 25 or 30 playbooks.
This looks to me a little bit more. So if I look at the way our SOC operates, and we've got about 700-800 use cases, and this looks a little bit more like a list of use cases, and their playbook is more their response that they've got, but a playbook needs to come back all the way from a detection to detection, enrichment, investigation, alerting, and then response. So it kind of needs to take it a little bit more through that. So I think the big gap from what I'm seeing here is the early on, that starting from detection through to the notification, and these playbooks that they've listed out here and these use cases are almost at the alert level, and starting from there, there's a big gap on the front end of it. So it's just going to change a little bit of the perspective, and that's probably a big part of the that needs to happen is getting to the point where what are the inspiration points for the data collection, we want the notification, but then what investigation tools do they have? What are the integrations that we need to do from that perspective? And that's why I listed HX is probably a great one, or if they're using CrowdStrike,
it is.
Those are going to be important.
It is. So I guess, Zain, at this stage, you guys now have a pretty clear, let me say, at least understanding on what we're trying to do here, the level that we're trying to glue together for us to put it down on the customer's table. Part of that would include an advisory approach, because such customers, specifically in the Middle East, needs lots of mentoring, lots of guidance for them to adopt the right strategy, especially when they're going even with a phased approach. So now that everything is pretty clear to a certain extent, what we're looking here is to get your estimation, your feel around at least phase one.
Yeah.
For us to take it to the next level and see whether it's something that we can collaborate on or not.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it is something that we would want to do. There are sort of things that we would want to make sure that we do address as part of this process. Our typical model is that we build these things and then so that it is our intellectual property, but we use it and reuse it for our clients. One of the things that we need to make sure that we do cover is, because a lot of the cases we will use what we have already developed, okay? And we need to make sure that we've got the ability to be able to retain that intellectual property. It is ours, and we don't want to have something like this where it can only be on there. So as we're going through the development cycle, our model is a shared resources model, a shared services model. So we want to make sure that the development cycles that we're spending is well used, but also it supports our ongoing business as well. That's the only way we can be more as cost effective as possible. With that in mind, what we need to make sure that we're addressing is that, what is the model? We can't. It's not cost effective for us to do dedicated resources so to this project, and that's all they work on. That's going to price it out of the market. That's kind of that initial stab in the dark that Chris gave you, was that's looking at dedicated resources, because that was the understanding. So we need to figure out what that blended model will look like. Project management, it's usually 30-40% of 30% of their time. 30-40% of their time. We're looking at a span. Realistically, I think that this initial phase is probably going to take 6 months or more. But it's not when we look at 40 hours, it's 40 hours spread across multiple resources that will be engaging with the client and working on this. So we will have certain things happening in parallel. There is a bigger, broader strategy around how that integrates up front. And how we tie it in, so we're working from a common framework for all of the workflows, and then continue on. So, for example, if there's ServiceNow integration, it's a different development resource that has to happen. There's the playbooks and the use cases, and making sure that we've got the right data and the detections and things like that are in place. So we'll be pooling and leveraging multiple resources. Phantom is just one and a bigger cog. So when I say 40 to 60 hours, it's a combination of multiple resources that will be necessary per playbook in order for us to make sure that will taper off. So going into phase 2, phase 3, that will taper off. And in terms of, because once then it just becomes the nuances based on something new that we've discovered, or a new integration that as we expand that out. So I think that I will still hold true to the probably closer to the 60 hours, especially in the phase 1 per playbook, and that'll give you a good indication of where we would land. We'll look at a competitive, just the partner agreements and things like that we'll have. We want you to make some money on our time as well. So we just got to look at what the partner agreement would be, and the discount levels that we can give you, so that you can still make some margin on this as well. So that's all going to be part of the agreements and contracts that we put in place. We can make some assumptions around there. Chris, is maybe where we need to engage with Brian and Menal a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then, but we can take a stab. So, what are your timelines around the response as far as the if this is going through an RFP? What are the timelines that we have in order to be able to give you some detail? John or Ziad, how soon do you need the information from us?
I think John is out of line because he was the one engaged, so I was waiting for his response. 1 second.
Okay.
He's still on
mute. He's disconnected.
Yeah. Just give me 1 minute, please.
Sure, no problem. And Chris, while we're going through that, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I mean I think from your perspective, if we can get John aligned with yourself in regard to what he needs to deliver to the client, what the timeframes are, and from yourself and your team in regard to what we would need to put in place, resource-wise and timeframe-wise, I think our side of things is a timeframe and a cost. We can talk with Brian in regard to discounts, and we can always make these things work at the end of the day. I'm glad we're having the discussion because, I think maybe from your side of things, it's a slightly different perspective to what we looked at the weekend. And maybe now is something which is a little bit more achievable, something for us to work on and partner with these guys for.
Yeah.
Here comes John.
So, sorry, guys. I got a call on using my mobile.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so I'm not sure how much you heard, but there was a question to you in terms of for us to give you some information. I think that we're pretty comfortable at the 40 to 60 hours, especially on the initial 25 playbooks. That will taper off. We'll get more efficient at it down the line, but we just want to make sure that we know and understand what exactly your timelines are and expectation and for responses.
So when you say timelines, Zain, what concerns you the most?
When you need information from us and pricing and all that sort of thing.
For the pricing,
to conclude the pricing, for the pricing, I think we want estimations by next week, maximum, and then this would allow us some time to go back and forth and then tighten the scope and then put the right agreements in place, all the details we want to make sure that we're comfortable dealing together. From there on, just for you to understand, we're expecting the starting point of the project would be sometime around January, February. And honestly, to support on this, we're evaluating the option of making this more remote than on-site, which I believe shouldn't be a problem given the situation globally. I think it's pretty doable. And yeah, I think those are the most critical timelines that you would be interested in.
The initial timeline that Zain was asking about is when we need to submit. This is the first thing. So what we need is exactly
to be honest,
by next week.
Zain, we already have submissions in there. So right, and at this stage we're still refining, amending. Whenever you're doing the right BOM with the customer, sure that you both are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm telling you I need it by next week, because if I'm gonna have to inject this, we're gonna have to do it at least from an estimation point of view by next week.
Okay. So John, just very quickly, when you say next week, are you looking for us to come back to you at the beginning of next week, or does that stretch to the end of the next week? If you say the beginning, great, fine,
no,
we'll work on that.
It's going to be by mid of next week. Most probably I'd be looking at, so mid on our perspective would be Tuesday, because our week starts on a Sunday.
It does indeed.
Yeah, so Tuesday most probably, so that we can have enough time on Wednesday, Thursday to come back to you guys with some feedback.
Okay, and my next question is this is obviously a customer of yours at the moment. I'd gather from the way you've been speaking.
Yeah.
Have you any idea in regard to kind of what budget these guys are going to be looking for from an initial setup, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? Do you know what sort of boundaries you're going to need to work within?
So honestly, until I look at what you guys are going to put in place, I can give you some context around that.
Yeah.
The components are not only Phantom and the implementation of Phantom. So, but we have a rough idea that we can share at this point. However, we're looking right now to evaluate your evaluation, and based on that, as I said, we put the right agreements and we lay it down completely in front of you as one team.
Okay.
Make sense, guys?
Yeah, it does. I think that we just need to make sure that we're coming in at a price point that's going to make sense.
Yeah.
So
Zain,
just
I have a couple of
giving
questions,
it-
if I may.
Yeah,
Please.
go ahead.
So when you say you don't have the availability right now, when do you expect to have people, whether shared or dedicated?
So in there, and that also depends on dedicated or designated, and how much time we're allocating to it. If we're wanting to dedicate, I mean, look, it'll take us, we've got the right resource who would be perfectly suited to this kind of engagement, and generally it will be a time from multiple areas of my development team. But I would say that we've got enough now. What we need time for is to be able to backfill for them. So if they're going to be 60% dedicated to this, I need to be able to backfill so that my other clients aren't impacted, and that's it. So if you're talking about a timeline of January, okay, I would need probably about 60 days notice of from the award until we have to go be available and start and kick off the project. So if we would have, kind of mid to end of November,
Even
backfill the resources.
Even if we manage to get it locked on a remote engagement, and you still need around 60 days to mobilize?
I think that we could kick off the engagement. So how much development work? I think that the initial phase is going to be a lot of scoping around where we want to prioritization and things. So even if they started in January sometime, so say mid-January is when their start date is, you're probably looking at 20 to 30 days of finalizing scope and prioritization and getting things aligned and signing off on project charter and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's that. So realistically, we're looking at so remote or on premise or some happy blend between there is I think that's not too much of an issue. That's why I'm saying like mid to end November is when are they planning on awarding this contract?
So we're pushing. I think by November timeframe we should have clear visibility, and we're expecting that by November we will be negotiating the contract at least. So I think our timelines cross at least when it comes to the dealing with how we're gonna manage it if everything goes smoothly. So yeah. And another thing from my side, when you say dedicated versus designated or shared, or don't you think with such customers and with such an engagement, a dedicated or would basically gives more comfort to the customer in terms of they're going to initiate, they're going to understand the environment, and they're going to basically be able to pick up and roll as soon as they get there.
So when you do in an engagement like this and you're doing dedicated resources, you're paying for the entire cost of that resource. But also keeping in mind that on a project like this, you've got a Phantom resource who's maybe a very strong Splunk resource, but what he is not is a a developer who's going to do API integration with respective vendors. I'm going to do, and from that perspective is that we're saying 60 hours per playbook, but that factors in all of the integration points with all of the apps. There's multiple skill sets you need, not just that. And so it's not as clear cut as that, and that's why we say designated. So it's like it's allocated to this client. You'll always engage with the same person. There will be a technical lead, which will be that same person, but you're going to have a project manager, and you're going to have varying other resources who will come in as needed, depending on the technical skills required and the integration work that is required. It's also a management specialist. It's not a process specialist. Oversight on that. So that tends to be why we prefer a designated. You see the same people all the time, but it's just not that all they're doing is this one particular thing.
Okay, so I'll leave it more to see what you guys are going to come back to us with, and then I think this will give us more clarity onto your methodology and approach. But that's it from my side, guys. Ziad, do you want to add anything to that?
No, thank you, John.
John, what I will add is that if the approach, the preferred approach, is a dedicated, then it is something that can be done. It does need a little bit more lead time in getting those resources freed up. But that does come at a premium. It does come at a lot more expensive.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking to see whether it's dedicated or not. No, but just for me to understand, because this project is very critical. It's going to define the future of how we're going to touch base around phase 2 and phase 3. So all what I want to stress around here is what matters here is the consistency and the outcome. As long as we're successful, whether dedicated, remote, local, whatever combination you think would fit here, what matters to us is that we do it right, and we make sure that we're there for the phase 2.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's for us as well. We're focused on the outcomes.
Exactly, the dedication itself and the commitment. So we can take it as a baseline, as John was mentioning, and yourself, Zain. If we start with something by next week, if you share with us what would be your estimation for that and the timelines required and the engagement model, based on that, we can start to discuss and negotiate on the timing, on the dedication or not of the resource, and what combination we can put in place to optimize.
We're going to try and give it to you in the most optimal cost model if there's some structure that they want, and also I think that for us to just get clarification right up front is on what kind of margin you're looking to add onto our services. It does have an impact, and we just want to make sure that, first of all, you're making some money, but we're also not pricing ourselves out of the market.
Yeah, and I think from my side, I'm conscious of time. We're all now connected. We have each other's contact details. John, if there are things that you need, please reach out to Zain. Zain will be your main point of contact from that technical perspective in regard to how we deliver services and people resource, etc. Zain, do you have an NDA that you can share with me? Alternatively, I can share one with you. If we can get that signed off as quickly as possible, then we both know we can start having an open conversation. And I think most definitely we can probably come up with what you're looking for in regard to requirements and timeframes and pricing. But like I say, I think we've spoken now, which is good. We all have each other's contact details. Zaid, I appreciate the fact that you've kept on my case for the last 4 days or so. And I just hope that from now we can get a little bit of traction and engagement going forward.
Yeah. I will share also. NDA is a standard text at the end, so I will share whatever we have. It's just about mutually not disclosing any information.
Yeah, we've got a standard.
So it will be like a back-to-back NDA, because we already have an NDA with the end user and with the customer.
Yeah.
So if we sign an NDA with you, it will be as if you are part of that NDA, which is signed with the customer.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll just get the standard one that we've got from our legal team, and we'll forward that on to you, and you can have a look at it. It is we do default to a mutual NDA, so it covers both sides.
Sure. We will do that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys.
No, John,
John.
I appreciate your time. Appreciate your honesty. Ziad, thank you for keeping on my case. We're talking now, and let's make sure we keep talking, and let's see what we can achieve over the next sort of 7 days.
We will, and let's manage it from a time zone perspective also. So
very good.
I know that
I'm a little bit better than I'm on the East Coast, so a little bit better than the rest of them. So we'll figure it out. It's not too bad.
No issues. We're here 24/7 almost, so no problem.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Jens, thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.